Welcome back, ladies and gentlefolk. I've been recently trying to get a little bit back into Half-Life 2 VR using Gary's Mod VR to play this specific title. Now, one of the biggest problems with the game when you start out is that, for one, in addition to having to basically look for the VR add-on for Gary's Mod, there used to be a really simple way to go into a menu and select a lot of customization options for your player and a lot of various ways to basically just get going right away. Now, in the most recent iteration of this particular add-on, they've decided that they're going to do everything command line, which means that a lot of the options that before you used to have a GUI for have now essentially become something that you have to actually click buttons within the command line in order to be able to basically continue. Now, this makes it a little bit more of a frustrating experience in my opinion, and I'm not really sure why they've decided to go away from the GUI. But the other problem is that the mod is by and large still incomplete. Now, granted, the developer, I believe his name is Katzy, has said that you don't really want to buy Gary's mod or Half-Life 2 or just a VR headset in general specifically just to use this particular mod or add-on to be more precise. But with that said, it seems like it's taken a couple of steps backwards since the sort of release a couple months ago, I would say, which had a lot of this functionality built in, which made it very easy to change player models, weapon models all on the fly. Now you basically have to go back into a menu to try and see it. And the other problem is that even though, again, this mod is able to work with Half-Life 2, you can also use it on, for example, Episode 1, Episode 2. If you have those campaigns installed, you can just go ahead and launch into it. The problem is a lot of the weapons are still using the old world models, which are terrible quality, but have the two sides. But the other issue is that you can also see that there are guns which have, basically from the first-person view models, those particular ones have the right side completely missing because, again, they were always kind of stuck to the right side of the screen where you would never really see them because all the reload animations happen within sort of screen space where the player is not seeing the other side of the gun, which for VR makes it an issue because if you want to have high-quality models, just like they were in first-person view, as soon as you turn it, you see the emptiness on the other side, which basically is a little bit kind of game-breaking in some ways, or at least it breaks immersion for me personally. Now, I'm going to show you guys in a little bit here some of the weapon models that I've downloaded, which you can basically get from the workshop. Super simple, and they do work, but bear in mind that it's not a 100% foolproof method of getting really great weapon models. Now, the other benefit with these is that you actually, for some of them at least, have proper working reload animations, which means that sometimes, you're able to actually just use them as a VR gun, but then have the animation play out by itself. And other times, what you actually have to do is do the reload manually, which is what some people look for, because this is basically a lot more like Half-Life Alyx, or just think about any other VR shooter on the market out there today, where pretty much all of the reloads are done by the player manually. However, unfortunately for some of these, it's still pretty broken, which really goes back to me saying, this game still needs a lot of community work to kind of get it to a state where it should be. And it's, again, rather disappointing because back around 2013, I want to say, we had a really great mod called Half-Life VR mod, and this particular team is still working on this particular kind of version that's going to use the most recent VR APIs, but at the time they were built for the Oculus DK1 and DK2, and they were basically using the Razer Hydra controllers for all of the reload animations and all of the various different kind of guns. So you'd be able to entirely manipulate the weapons in real time to reload them, and it was really simple, really straightforward, and they had a whole tutorial section to teach you how to use the different various reloads that are required for each gun specifically. And again, I'm going to get into that in a little bit here when we take a look at the actual guns and 3D models in VR. So let's take a look at them now so we can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we are right now in Gary's mod. As you can see, I've got the rifle in front of me, and this is the Combine rifle. In particular, this is the VR model of the Combine rifle, and you can see you can get rid of the clip, you can put it back, and you can cock the gun in order to basically continue firing. So again, very simple, straightforward process, very easy to do. But unfortunately, while this gun works pretty great, if you take a look at some of the other ones, they're not always as easy. So you can see it's a little bit more difficult to actuate the slide on this gun. Now, also, using the index controller, I found that it's pretty difficult sometimes to put the clip inside. I often drop it because I have to really grasp the whole controller really, really hard in order to actually continue holding the clip. Otherwise, it just drops to the ground. I'm not sure if you can set the threshold for that, but it's just a little frustrating. Now, here's the SMG, where previously I talked about having an automated reload animation, which I actually prefer because it just works. Because when you take a look at some of these other guns, this is a stock Half-Life 2 gun here. And again, you can see the issue I was having previously. Here's the grenade, which works in a non-VR version, but then if you take a look at the actual VR version of the grenade, it's terrible. But let's take a look at another weapon here. Now the Magnum itself right here is pretty cool. This is just a remodel of the stock gun. So again, this one uses the basically in-game animations, which play out on their own. Again, my preferable way of doing this because it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to get a reload, which is really nice. Now, whereas if you take a look at the Magnum here, I can't reload anything, so it's just frustrating. And I'm not sure what the button is to basically get the clip out. I assume that maybe, you push something out or you basically tap on the back part of it in order to make it come out, but it's just really annoying because I constantly miss the actual rod, which is supposed to make the, clip fall out, or the drum to be more precise. And again, just grasping these bullets is really frustrating for this particular weapon. Now, one of them has an actual, reload clip that you're supposed to use, a fast reload clip, which is supposed to be this gun right here. But for one reason or another, when I try to reach down for it, again, can't find it. Where's the clip? And so it just makes the reload animations for these really difficult to achieve properly. And again, pushing on the rod to release it is almost impossible. It just doesn't happen. I end up pushing a bunch of other buttons instead when I try to actually do something. So it's just, it's one of those things where it's sometimes really frustrating, especially if you're, in some action. Again, you can see I tried pushing the release right there, but nothing happened. Now, if we take a look at the VR SMG, I have a bunch of different versions. This one looks a little bit better than the, stock VR SMG that Catzy made, but again, the reload appears to be broken, or maybe I'm just not, not clear on where it's supposed to be. Now, the VR crossbow, on the other hand, is really cool because you can see compared to the Half-Life 2 stock crossbow, which, in here, it just looks broken and really ugly, and I'm not sure what's up with my textures on that one, but it just looks like garbage. Now, you can also see that the reticle works, which is kind of a throwback to the 2013 HLVR mod, where they had this working already. So again, we're now, more than 7 years past that point, and we finally got one of these crossbows working. Now, I believe this actually released about last year, so it's, approximately 7 years. Might be a little bit less than that, because I don't remember exactly when this particular model was made. But nonetheless, you can see the reload works, you can do it manually, but again, some of the points that allow you to grasp the actual string are kind of hard to catch, and again, that means that if you're in the middle of, shooting some antlions or something like that, it's just not really going to be ideal. Now, the other part is the crowbar. You can see that the VR crowbar works really easy, really simple. You can see the sparking happening that I'm actually hitting stuff, which is great. Now, if you see the stock crossbar, or crowbar, sorry, you can actually see that it's not working. And the only way to get it to work is to press the mouse button to play the actual crossbow animation, which is a little bit frustrating because you'd think it would just work. Instead, you have to have, basically the specific VR, crowbar in order to get it to work. You also can't grasp any of the objects that are kind of just out and about, unfortunately. And then the other part, again, you can see that a lot of the stock Half-Life 2 weapons are just missing the other half on the other side, which in my opinion is also kind of just a pain. Same thing with the rocket launcher. Now, you can get a lot of these as third-party add-ons or mods, but it just means that's a lot more stuff to fiddle around with to get it to work at the point where it does. And now you can see the VR grenade is just completely busted. In this particular case, I try and pull the pin and I throw it, and then my whole game just basically bugs out. and then it just stuck until I basically pull out a different weapon, at which point the game finally unlocks and I'm able to do stuff. So it's really strange, and there's still a lot of bugs to work out. Now, granted, I do have a lot of add-ons installed, which could also be messing with stuff. One of the coolest ones is the shotgun, in my opinion, though, because it's relatively easy to load compared to, let's say, the SMG or the pistols, and you can see the action working too, which is really neat. So you can also insert the round into that chamber if you so wish, and your two arms are actuated when you try and basically pull back on the pump, which again is really neat because it just makes it like an actual VR shotgun versus having to use the stock shooting animations. Now again, sometimes the points at which you can grasp the pump are a little bit, I think, too sensitive in the sense that you really have to be in a very precise point to grasp it properly. I wish I had a video to go along with this to kind of emphasize that. Unfortunately, my camera has been acting up. But again, as you can see, it's just it's kind of a pain. And I'm going to cut it off right here and kind of go back into the regular video mode to discuss some of these problems further. Course, this really begs the big question, which is, which kind of controller should you use for Garry's Mod VR? Is the index controller simply not good enough anymore? Do you just want to go back to using the Vive ones? Do you end up using the Oculus controllers instead? Is there a good solution here? Is Windows Mixed Reality then the better way to go, perhaps? And the answer is, I think it really depends, and I think that the problem is there's still so much extra configuration that you have to do across the board in order to really make this work that I just don't know if it's really worth it for the average person that's trying to get into VR to try and run Half-Life 2 in this particular way. Now, I believe that it's probably definitely for somebody who wants to tinker around quite a bit to try and get it to work, and I'll see if I can get a guide out for you guys that includes all of the 3D weapons and the different versions that allow you to use either the manual reload where you do it yourself using the controllers, or a method that actually uses the in-game animations if, for example, you are on an older WMR headset that doesn't have the dual cameras, or the quad cameras, I should say, to allow you to actually properly do reloads when you're sort of out of bounds of the camera itself. But, with that said, again, I think that there's still a long way to go before we have the sort of complete VR Half-Life 2 experience. Now, if you've been following along with the Reddit for the HLVR team, they have been posting some updates here and there, but again, it's one guy with about 4 engineers or programmers that are working on it, and they're working on it part-time. So, we're looking potentially at a situation that's more like Black Mesa, where, it gets announced, and then years and years later, it finally gets released as a final version. But ultimately, it doesn't seem like Valve is doing anything in that space to really bring Half-Life 2 into VR on their own. Now, a number of mods exist out there that have taken the levels from Half-Life 2, imported them into the Half-Life Alyx engine, and have been using it that way, so essentially, Source 1 to Source 2, but again, there's still a lot of issues, and ultimately, it's basically plagued by the same problems as you see in Garry's Mod VR, in the sense that, unless you want to stick to using Half-Life Alyx weapons, you're stuck using the models that were in Half-Life 2 originally, which look pretty terrible. Now, some people have been creating fully realized 3D models for Half-Life Alyx to be able to use, so again, if you dig around enough, you can get those to work. But currently, as far as I know, only a couple of levels have been converted, and you have to launch them manually, which means their transition points are still broken, which again, in that sense, Garry's Mod VR at least has stepped away from that, where the transitions actually do currently work. But I still think it's a half-baked experience that may not necessarily be for everyone. So with that said, guys, hang out until I create the guide. If you liked the video, go ahead and like the video. If you didn't, let me know why, and ultimately comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video.